Happy New Year's. It is time to look back at 2024. What are the biggest things we're going to remember, good and bad, and what are we optimistic about for 2025? It's coming up next.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Badger fans? Welcome to the new year. It's 2025. We are excited that you are choosing to spend a little bit of that time here with us. I am Ryan. That is Rajiv. This is Locked On Badgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We are talking New Year's resolutions today, what we want to see from basketball and football in 2025, the best and the worst of 2024, and some reasons for optimism and pessimism. Rajiv's already laughing because this was not a banner year for Badgers athletics, but I do want to sound fireworks quick because it is the new year. And we're excited to welcome that in. I don't know if anyone can even hear that. I tried.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. Okay. Reggie, let's start here, man. I want to start positive. It's a new year, new chapter. Put the 2024 book on the library shelf and maybe never open it again. What do you remember from 2024 positively? Basketball or football?
Yeah, this is tough. Let's be honest. It's tough. It wasn't a very good year for us. So a couple things, and I'm reaching here, but let's call it what it is. The January for the basketball team that we had in 2024, we went 7-1. We peaked at number 6 in the AP poll. We had big wins against Iowa, at Minnesota, Nebraska, Michigan State. Now, that being said, February, not so good, but January, we had excitement. And like, as a Badger fan this year, you have to find moments where you got up and where you were feeling excited and you were happy. And that's where I went with both of my things here. And in basketball in January, I felt like I was on top of the world. I was like, we're number 6. We're going to be a top 2 or 3 seed in the tournament. We're going to go to the Sweet 16, hopefully more. And I was really feeling optimistic. Now, again, that died, but I think that month really gave us something to cheer about. So it's one of the best things that happened in 2024 because I actually felt like we had a pulse for a short amount of time.
No, that's a great one. I had something similar written down. For me, was in that stretch, it was Nuclear Klesmet. If you remember that stretch where Indiana was in that game.
Yeah, Indiana.
He felt like, he just went off. It was this like 4 or 5 game stretch where he was absolutely incredible. That was a lot of fun. The basketball in that stretch was a lot of fun. Some wins against really Big Ten teams. I also wrote down the win against Purdue. You go into the Big Ten Conference tournament. Purdue's the number 3 team in the country. They got Zach Edey. They have a loaded team, an absolute monstrous team. And we also what they did in March. Knocking them off was a lot of fun. And if you remember those battles with Edey, it was just like, it felt like King of the Hill, where it's just the biggest kid on the playground is at the top and he's just pushing all the kids down. And we had like 5. It felt like every time we played them, we had like 5 people foul out. And at the end of the game, Carter Gilmore's guarding them somehow. Like that was such an awesome win, right? To beat Purdue, number 3 team in the country. Maybe the best win of 2024, unless you can think of something else. So that's another one that I had. I will very fondly remember that Purdue win.
Yeah, the Big Ten tournament run in general, but that's obviously I had the tournament run. So yeah, that was huge, and almost really getting it done against Illinois too. And they beat us in the championship game, but that was a close game for a lot of it. Another one for me is moving to the football side. It's a similar kind of thing. There was that tiny 3-game stretch where we beat Purdue, Rutgers, and who's the other team? Northwestern, 117-16 in those 3 games. We gave up 16 points, scored 117. We thought Braden Locke was a good quarterback. I think we actually did a show. Like, did we have a good quarterback? I'm pretty sure we did that one.
Probably.
And leading up then to the first, I include the first half of Penn State in this as well, because we were at that game. So many of Locked On and Bucky Report people were there. We had a great time. And walking into the stadium, feeling the energy, feeling like we were actually going to take a big step here. We had just had 3 huge wins, albeit against inferior opponents. And then the first half, we were thinking, we're actually going to win this game. Like we're leading at halftime. There's some positive things happening. We could win this game. We could really be relevant. And then again, it all just came crashing down with a major bang. But again, those 3 games and that week leading up to Penn State, I wanted so bad to be at that place where we were excited about Penn State, and I was. And that is one of the best moments of 24. Again, didn't really materialize in anything, but for that short amount of time, we were pretty pumped.
Yep. I'll give you another one here. John Tonje, for me, early part of 2024, or later part of 2024, sorry. But his emergence, right? Seeing a star, Some of the early performances, the Arizona game, obviously that game doesn't look as great now, but just I remember in that moment, like how much fun was that? And you were honoring the Big Ten. You were honoring the Big Ten title teams, the Final Four teams. Bo Ryan was there. All the alumni was there. I got to talk to Josh Gosser about it. What a great friggin' win. Because we had thought, man alive, that you're going to have all. I think we kind of talked, why don't you have these guys in for Detroit Mercy and just, just to be safe, like just to be safe. Obviously, that's exaggeration, but that was a great moment, a great win. And even though that game doesn't look as great in retrospect because of what Arizona's done, honoring those Final Four teams with a win at an electric environment, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, totally massive. Another one I've got, kind of going back to football again, is AJ Blazek. I feel like that's one of the best things about this year. He is a dude. I mean, his recruiting prowess, his coaching, the way the line looks to be set up for the next few years. Like, I just think AJ Blazek screams Wisconsin. And right now we desperately need things that sort of scream our culture and the culture that we want to sort of, reinstate at our program. And I think AJ Blazek kind of just personifies what we want to be. And I'm so happy that he is on our staff.
I think Whitlow too. I like both those line hires that he made in 2024. So I think both of those. Whitlow was hired in 24, right?
I think so.
I think so too. But I like both those hires. I love the Blazek one. Another one I have here, and I just wrote down the emergence of incredibly easy people to root for. And what I mean by that is in a world where people are so upset, and I get it. Like, we just saw Xavier Lucas leave. I mean, not officially, but leave. And it kind of stinks. Like, some moments of this new version of college sports kind of stink. Chucky Hepburn leaving kind of stinks. But you look at basketball, I kind of love rooting for Carter Gilmore, Jack Janicki, Kamari McGee, all players, in-state players originally, all players that have improved every year, all players that have bought into their roles. To me, it makes the basketball team, this version of it, incredibly easy to root for. Those players, incredibly easy to root for. I really like watching them play. I really like watching this basketball team play. Even though I know there's more losses in the future, I will remember these guys out of this year as, I really enjoy watching those guys play. And that's why we love sports. That's why we watch sports. So to me, that was a nice little positive as well.
Yeah, and the effort that those guys bring, I think you're right about that. Like, the entire bench with McGee and Janicki, and I mean, they're like, you want them to do well. I think you said it perfectly. You're rooting for them, and you can see that they want it so bad. They like it, and we want it for them. And yeah, there are a lot of positives. There's not a lot of positives, but when you look hard, you can find them throughout the year. One last one for me is the 2025 recruiting class in football. I mean, once again, we're hitting the recruiting on all cylinders. We've got to move it onto the field now, which is a mandate next year for this football program. 100% a mandate. You have to do it. But we have to see signs of legitimate improvement. But the recruiting class is once again stacked up. And I think seeing that 25 class on signing day, that really filled me with a lot of optimism about moving forward. So that is something that really great happened in 24.
Yeah, I wrote down recruiting as well. Won't belabor that, but all the same points. I like what we're doing there. Obviously, I like the players we're bringing in. The last one I wrote down is the Penn State trip. You mentioned it. I just want to hit on it too. Like, it's a ton of fun just to get together with you, with Justin, and with everybody else at a game. Just meet incredible people, have good food, good beer, get in Camp Randall, and all the experiences we got to build around that weekend I thought were phenomenal. So we could lose every game, and just being able to get around people like that are in our community is always going to be a highlight for me. And it turns out we lose every game we go to. So like,
we really need to change that.
So whatever, right? Like, it's all about building the community. So that's my last positive as well. Coming up, we're going to get into some of the negatives, and it was not hard to find some. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for friends of the show over at GameTime. GameTime is the number one source. If you need tickets to any type of event, go to GameTime, whether it's sports, which we talk about all the time, but concerts, theater, ballet, NASCAR, rodeo, whatever it is, there's probably robot fighting tickets over at GameTime. Whatever you need over at GameTime, download the Game app today. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Snag the tickets without the stress over at GameTime. There's no reason to be stressed about this stuff. There's enough going on in the world and our lives that take up mental energy. The last thing you want to be doing is stressing about going and doing more stuff. Find easy tickets, cheaper prices, better inventory, great seats over at our good friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Create the account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. All right, Reggie, let's get into this fun portion. What was one of your negatives of 2024?
I mean, am I allowed to just say everything else that we didn't mention in the segment, in the first segment of the show? Because that's really where I'm at. I mean, for me, it starts and ends with one thing. It's the bull streak ending. It's something that I was really proud of. And I feel like I talked about it a lot. High Floor is the kind of program that I like to root for, that has an opportunity to be super successful any given year, but is always going to be in that mid to upper part of the conference. And we were a dominant team in a 7-team division over the course of several years. Now we're a mid to low team in an 18-team league when we've got a big way to climb out. And having the bowl streak end and seeing a team like Rutgers play in a bowl game, seeing only 4 Big Ten teams not be in a bowl game, and we're one of them, that's really, 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 frankly, just pisses me off. And that's the worst thing that happened this year. I mean, yeah, I've got others on my list too, but nothing compares to losing the bowl streak and feeling that massive, like, just deflating feeling that every team is like, watching this or watching their team. My dad's an Iowa fan. He's here right now. We watched the Iowa game yesterday, and I'm like, I don't even get to experience bowl season for the first time that I can remember. And that's really frustrating.
Yeah, that's well said. It's number one on my list too. What I want to add a tiny bit too, but what has been watching bowl season been like for you without having a bowl game to think? Like, to me, it's felt so empty.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, it's also the inaugural season of the college football playoff of 12 teams, so that's exciting, and I am watching that, and I'm going to continue watching it. But it's pretty bad. That's why I'm so angry that Indiana was in it, because I just felt like that should be us. We're that next team that should, for the last 20 years, that would have been there, but it just made it's deflating. But I'm still trying to enjoy it as much as I can.
Yeah, to me, it's been like one of those metronome moments in my life. The Badgers make a bowl game I've lived by a couple principles in my life. Try to be kind. The Badgers will make a bowl game every year. You never outgrow Pop-Tarts, and beer goes with everything. Like, outside of that, I'm pretty good. And Aliens 2 is the greatest sequel ever. Aliens is the greatest sequel ever. Outside of those things, but the Badgers not making a bowl game, kind of broke me, right? It broke one of those lighthouse things I had in my life that I could always look towards. And the thing I'd add on to you in my brain is just, it creates this little bit of doubt that, oh no, are we maybe broken? Because I never thought that way with Badger football, ever. Even last year, I was like, okay, not quite the year we wanted, but year one, Fickle. Okay, now we build. Geez, are we broken? For the first time in my Badger life, I'm kind of, as a football fan, I'm kind of like, I don't know if we might be, Richie. This might be on the downward slope, and I've never thought that before.
Yeah, ever. I mean, 100%. And that got epitomized by missing the bowl streak, but also how we did it, which is losing that Minnesota game. That was the biggest gut punch that I think Badger fans can really feel, is losing to your 2 rivals badly. I mean, we got destroyed by Iowa, and then Minnesota just kind of played with us. They dominated that game from beginning to end. The score didn't look as bad as the Iowa game did, but that was a rough one. And yeah, it is a moment where you kind of were like, okay, so all year we thought they were bad and we were okay. And going into the year, we thought we were going to be better than everybody else thought. And and we were wrong. We were bad. We were really bad. And we got smoked by our rivals, which is just a really crappy way to feel this season and to see it materialize. And there's no worse way for the bowl streak to end than that game. Losing that game is just you can't have a worse situation for us to then have now multiple months of no Badger football, hoping and praying that it's actually going to turn around.
Yeah, no, that's the next one I wrote down, was the rivalry games. You lost every rivalry game. You lost every trophy, and you got pounded in those games. You got mauled by Iowa. Mauled us. Iowa did to us what we used to do to Ball State. Nebraska toyed with us. Minnesota, that was never a game. That was never a game for the Axe with the bowl streak on the line, bro. Horrible. And I'll tell you, the one play, if I remember one play from this year, that we're on the pessimism side here, it's that lock interception against Penn State. That's the moment it felt like everything broke. Nothing got better after that moment.
We were right behind that play. We were in the end zone, and I mean, literally, we're right behind that play. And when he threw that ball, we saw it. We were like, "Oh crap! There's a guy right there," and it's just okay. Guess there goes that. Yeah, you're right. That was really the turning point. That whole season just went straight down in the tank.
What's your next negative from 2024? That can't be it.
The JMU first round loss again. I obviously I'm a guard in type of a guy. I'm not a guard out. And I just think that, there's a lot left to he leaves a lot to be desired. And one of them is this, like, we need to be advancing in the NCAA tournament. Losing to James Madison was brutal. It was just one more in the line of succession of bad tournament performances. I'm glad we got in, glad we were a 5 seed. Appreciate that. And I want to see that again, but we need to see advancement. Like this team has to perform better when it matters. And that was another gut punch. It was just one more thing that, I wanted to be able to stand up and say, hey, look, we're okay. We were a 5 seed. We got into the round of 32, the Sweet 16. And instead, I just felt like I was constantly defending my position on being a great guard supporter, which I don't want to do that. I want to be happy about that. I don't want to have to defend it. Yeah. And the JMU loss is something that the people that are guard out really, they hold that up, and it's fair. And it's something that we really need to stop doing.
I think the problem with the JMU one, and that's obviously on my list as well, it's not, you could lose to a 12 seed. That happens all the time. You can't get blown out the door. It looked like we showed up asleep. And I'll tell you something. I don't want to say that on air. I'm going to tell you something off air. Sorry. And I don't mean that as a tease. That just came to my brain as something that anyway. I'll tell you that off air. But you can't show up in that moment and look like you're not ready. It looked like we were still lacing up our sneakers. And bro, JMU beat us to a pulp. Yeah, they just there was never a game either. And that was just a brutal way to lose, man. After you had beaten Purdue, you had gone on that conference tournament run. Just brutal. And we had a big size advantage. Miserable game to end a season on. For basketball, another one, it's losing a guy like Hepburn. It felt like for the longest time, we were pretty insulated with NIL, a guy here, a guy there, but losing a point guard that had started for 3 years for you. For 3 years, he was Mr. Wisconsin. He's got a Wisconsin tattoo on it. Like, I remember when that happened, and I just said, man, this is different, right? This one feels different. And listen, if Chucky Hepburn was on this team this year, we'd be a better team. And I thought that was another one I look back at, and man, that just stinks. I talked about the players that it's a lot of fun to cheer for this year. It also is painful to lose a guy who started for you for 3 years.
I remember titling that episode of the Bucky Report that week, Portal Gut Punch, when we lost him. Yeah, totally agree. That was a bad one. I'll kind of flip back to football. The next thing I wrote down was the TVD injury against Alabama. You mentioned the Penn State interception from Locke. That game against Alabama, before he got hurt, he actually looked like he was poised to have a good game. He was moving really well. They were in a couple really good plays to get him into space. And even on the play that he got hurt, it was a good play. And in that moment, I literally remember just staring at the TV. My jaw just kind of dropped, and I'm like, well, there goes that. And the second year in a row, I just had flashbacks to Mordecai, who ended up coming back and playing much more. But just having all that excitement about a transfer quarterback that you could maybe turn around your season, and then realizing in that moment, as we all knew, it was a non-contact. It was definitely an ACL. You could just see it. And it's just such a deflating feeling. And we were fighting back from that even after that. Now, we had good moments out beyond that, but we never really ever got to experience what Tyler Van Dyke would have been for this program had he been here the whole year, what it would have looked like. And that was a killer.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I didn't write that down, but you're right. Like, I remember that moment in that game, and you just can't lose a starting quarterback, man, if you're Wisconsin. It's just brutal. My last one I wrote down, and I feel like I didn't have to search as hard for my negatives as I did my positives. That I had more, I think I left on the table here, on the cutting room table, like this B film that didn't make it into the movie. I would say my last one, though, was that USC game. I remember at halftime, I think you and I talked on the phone. We talked about, we're like, bro, we got him. Welcome to the Big Ten, boys. You can't stand up. And then you have the muffed punt. You have multiple picks. The game ends up looking like a blowout. You could never get pressure. Like, oh gosh, dude, that game was so horribly annoying because it fell into a trend that we've had for 2 years. We can't close games anymore.
I mean, I was at that game, and it was excruciating to experience it because the first half, yeah, boy, the USC fans were real quiet. And boy, did they ever let me hear it, and all the Badger fans hear it in the second half, which, you know what? Like, they definitely got us, and we looked like we didn't even want to be there. We looked like coming out of the locker, and we were like, nah, I think we're done. We've played as hard as we can play, and that's all we're going to give you. And it was bad. I mean, there were moments of such high in that game, like the Vinny Anthony touchdown. I was standing behind Locke when he threw that. It was incredible. Just the best pass I think I've ever seen him throw in his entire time at Wisconsin. And then to see the second half just fall apart, walking back to my car, just feeling so deflated. I can't, like, I popped on your reaction show for 2 minutes. It was awful, man. It was really bad.
What do you have anything else you want to throw into the
That was my last one, other than just everything else. I just feel like everything is just, it feels like it was a year full of bad stuff. I mean, I could go into receiver drops. I could go into quarterback play. I could go into, there's so many things that you're just like, what is going on? I think the one thing I would just add on that is just Luke Fickle had a really bad year. And there were times where I constantly said, like, we looked like we were outcoached multiple times. And that has to stop, because he's not going to last if he can't pull that stuff together. And I still have a lot of optimism about what Luke Fickle can bring, but he had a bad year. And looking back at 2024, I think I'm just going to look back and say, like, this is a year that needs to be just disappear, and we can never, ever repeat it.
Yeah, that's well said. All right, coming up, we're going to talk reasons for optimism into 2025, plus a couple reasons for pessimism, and what would be a New Year's resolution for football or basketball. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers as we wrap up New Year's edition of the show. Thank you all for joining in. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You got to go over to FanDuel. Futures, parlay, spreads, teasers. Rajiv, how'd you finish up this year? Do you know off the top of your head?
It was about 64%, so a pretty solid year.
That's awesome, man. And you get into all that action over at FanDuel. Take Rajiv's advice if you want. Futures, parlay, spreads, teasers. Again, always do it responsibly, but it is the official sportsbook of the NFL, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is what I use because it's fast, it's simple, it's easy. It's got a great user interface. I remember I've talked about when I first started kind of online gambling. I think my site was routing money through like Ukraine and like other countries and funding some warlord somewhere, and I would never get my money even if I did win. FanDuel's not like that. Super simple, easy, as trustworthy as your grandma. Head over to FanDuel. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Right now, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. All right, Rajiv. Let's go. Let's start with pessimism on this. Reason for pessimism going into 2024 could be football or basketball, or either.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pessimism for football to me is that our team could still be really bad, even though we are the top ranked transfer portal in the Big Ten, top 10, I think, in the country. Done a good job, but as you kind of pointed out, our defense could still be bad. Our team could be bad, and given the schedule we have, it's not out of the question that this is a 4 or 5 win team. It's just not, and that's just the reality. You look at the schedule, you look at the teams we're playing next year in football. 2025 could be another really bad year. I hope it's not, but I mean that. It's just like we're on this precipice kind of point where if we could really tank, and then you're in an abyss that you don't want any part of, that teams like Nebraska have been in for so long, that they're just, I don't want to be a team that's fighting for a bowl game as like what I want out of football season. Like, no, that's not us, and it can't be us. And I am very concerned about like what this schedule lines up at and what we actually could look at. So the schedule gives us a lot of reasons to be pessimistic.
Yeah, I'm going to go two ways with football, and it's kind of similar to what you're saying. The first, it's picking exactly off what you said. We could be really bad, but the part about that could be really tough is how has the Badger community been this year, 2 years in, right? If you have another year, like part of why I love doing this is because I just love like the community. I'm more of an optimistic guy, and sometimes it starts to beat you down a little bit. That's nobody's fault. Everybody has every right to be frustrated, right? But as the losses build up more, that frustration builds up more, and it just, oh gosh, listen, Captain Obvious here. It's just more fun to do this when you're winning games, right? There's more fun when you're successful on the field. The other one I'd ping on is I'm legitimately worried. And I talked about this before, so I won't go into in depth on this. I'm legitimately worried the defense could be horrific. I'm not horrifically bad, but really, really bad, because I think the secondary took a major step back no matter what we do. And that's if we keep Rico. And I'm not sure if we really got the pass rush better. So if you think worst case, last year's pass rush with this year's secondary, could be scary.
Yeah, I mean, I have another one along those lines, and it's kind of the mystery of the cornerback room. We had so much cornerback, like a mass exodus, really. Some topic about Paul Haynes, and there's a little bit of like a mystery over the cornerback room. Of course, we have the Lucas situation, which is a whole nother separate thing. But for some reason, the secondary, yeah, I mean, it's a humongous hole. Like, it is the biggest gaping hole I think I've ever seen on a team in January, looking ahead of the next season. I mean, it is brutal. And what happened, why it happened, how it happened. All these things are question marks. And I literally wrote down the mystery of the cornerback room. It's just very strange. I don't know what happened. And it's definitely a reason for pessimism because, like you said, and boy, we could get shredded by a lot of good teams on our schedule if we don't have the secondary that can actually defend it.
Give me an optimism heading into 2025.
Optimism for me, Jeff Grimes, the return of a recognizable Wisconsin offense, using what we do well, which is, of course, the power run game. I love the fact that he has a lot of inside zone schemes. The jet sweep will return. I'm not saying I want a Paul Christ offense, but I do want something that utilizes the strength of our team, which, looking at the 24 class, the 25 class in our current roster, is the offensive line. And I think he does that. He is an offensive line guy. And I think that's really where I feel like we can kind of bring things back and calm everything and have something to build off of. We've got to raise the floor of this team. And the way you do that is by, putting the ball in your best player's hands in a sense, which is kind of utilizing what we do best, building from the trenches. We're focusing on that. Luke Fickle talked about getting bigger on the defensive line too. I know you're worried about the defense, but the line did get bigger. So I think there's optimism there, especially on the offensive side of the ball, because we're going back to kind of our roots a little bit.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I didn't write down Grimes specifically. I just kind of wrote down, I think the offense is going to cook much, much better next year. I think the coaching is going to be better. I like Billy Edwards. I was on him kind of early. I know some people were a little hesitant, which I get. Maryland wasn't a good team last year. I think that was more around the pieces than him. So I like the quarterback we brought in. As long as he can stay healthy, knock on wood. I like Grimes. I think the running backs are coming back better. I love the young offensive line talent we have. I love the Kojio. We got a tight end. I really think there's a chance this offense could take I'm hesitant to say significant, but take a pretty marked jump up. I'm pretty optimistic about it, man.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is room for optimism there when it comes to the offense. It's a good one. Kozio, by the way, like he's by far my favorite transfer. That's a great one. We really need that. Like that's such a nice thing. Well, and for me, I'll flip to the other sport is winter is coming. I know you labeled an episode. You actually titled an episode that, and I said it on my show a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, Nolan Winter is growing in front of our eyes. And we've seen that. I'm a huge Nolan Winter fan. I've been a big fan of him since he was in high school. I think he's really going to be the guy here. And it's a slow progression. And he's not going to be an all-star immediately, but he's definitely improving and he's taking really big strides. And he is taking ownership of the front court. He's saying, this is my front court now. I'm going to be the guy here. And you can see that moxie, that swagger that he has, and it's coming. Like Winter is coming. He really is a dude. Yeah. And I'm so excited about what he can bring in 2025.
I love that one, man. I don't know if you got the show, but some of his offensive metrics, he's in the 96th percentile finishing at the rim. Like upper 90 percentile on offensive metrics. The only thing with him was we got to see what does that look like with the bigger workload because his usage rate's not very high, but he's been awesome. He's been getting so good recently. I think if you're looking at the Badgers, there's your star next year, quite honestly, Nolan Winter. So I love that one. My other one for optimism also on basketball is great guard. Again, I know this is going to be a little divisive because there's a lot of people that are a little frustrated with guard at times. But if you want to look at guard, look at a guy who hit a home run in the portal with Tonje, who has developed Nolan Winter, who has made really good coaching hires with Penny, bringing in a developmental coach. The offense looks better. He's adjusting. They did better in the non-con than I think anybody predicted. I think you got to be pretty optimistic about this team that he put forward, but also seeing Greg Gard evolve and change to kind of match the current environment of college basketball. I'm pretty optimistic going forward with that, and I like the direction we're headed into 2025.
I sure hope you're right, man, because we need something on this. Yeah. We need to cheer for something. And these next couple months where we're pretty much focused on basketball would be really nice.
Agreed. Let's go to resolutions. So we're going to come up with a couple resolutions for football or basketball heading into 2025. I'll start here with my football one. Learn from mistakes. I almost went into a couple different rabbit holes with this, but quite honestly, look at what happened last year. If you're a Mike Tressel and you're not an idiot. I know he's not an idiot. He knows football. That didn't work. So let's learn from it. Let's grow from it. That probably means some players a little earlier need to play. The rotations need to be a little cleaner. One of the biggest issues we saw last year, Rajiv, was that group of linebackers coming in that we were all so high on. They couldn't figure out how to use them for a while. Like they had almost too many pieces. They can't do that on the defensive line this year, right? They have to be quicker in identifying and playing the guys that need to play and then adjusting schemes to make it work. So learn from mistakes is my biggest New Year's resolution for football. And I banged the table when I said that. I don't know if the mic picked it up.
I mean, we really need to learn from mistakes. You're absolutely right about that one. For me, it's we saw former players this year talking, on social media about the program. We saw like fans, obviously. We need to steady the ship and we need to reset the foundation of this program. Like we, after we had the whole Paul Chris thing and we had the whole Jim Leonard, Luke Fickle discussion, we were all talking about how Luke Fickle was going to take this program to the next level. I certainly was. And I still believe that he can take it to the next level. He came in and said he wanted to win championships, but you can't do any of that if you don't have the foundation of the culture of this program and building that. So you need to steady the ship, which means the Jeff Grimes hire was a good one. The recruiting class is a good one. We have to be more successful. We have to do what we do well, and we have to get better defensively, like you said. Like that's just what Wisconsin defense is a staple of what we've done for years. That's how we were so good for so long. So steady the ship, and that's top down. That's with fans. That's with former players. That's with the entire athletic department. Like everything needs to be. We've got to reset, and we have to build, a strong foundation and grow from it. Because if this team wins 3 or 4 games next year, loses a bunch more people, doesn't have a 26 class that resembles the 25 class, and then all of a sudden you really are looking at being a 12 to 15th ranked Big Ten team out of 18, which you talk about completely just annihilating all of what Barry built. That's what could happen. And we are absolutely at a pivotal point in this football program's history. And this is the year to steady the ship, figure out what went wrong, like you said, and take it, fix it, and build upon it, but build upon it slowly, deliberately. Like we have to steady the ship. I think we're taking the right steps to get there. I'm confident we can do it, but boy, if we don't see it, we're going to have a real problem.
That was really well said. I love that. And a word I've used on my show a lot is solid. Get solid, right? A lot of people looked at the Billy Edwards Jr. signing and said, oh man, you're not going to be able to do that unless you get a Mendoza. I'm like, we're not shooting for Mendoza right now. We're not a Mendoza away from the playoffs. We have to get solid. We have to get back to just being, I hate to say this, it sounds horrible. We have to get back to being okay. Because we weren't even okay this year. So yeah, I think that was really well said. Great show, man. Anything else you want to say? It is New Year's today. We're releasing this show January 1st. So really do appreciate everybody tuning in and wishing everybody an incredible New Year's holiday with family, friends, whatever it is. Please be safe. Rajiv, anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, just Happy New Year to everyone. Obviously, this is doing this show with you. Obviously, it just reminds me of how lucky I am to be doing this with you, which is something that an opportunity that you gave me, which I'm very appreciative of. And with the community, everyone we get to meet, everyone we get to hang out with. I know that you're doing a basketball meetup soon. Like, there's just a lot of good things in a world where we're not really happy with our sports teams, and these teams in particular. Even in our other NFL teams, don't even want to go there. But the positivity is the people and who we get to interact with, who we get to be around. So Happy New Year to all of you. Looking forward to another great year of Locked On Badgers and doing this stuff with you, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And same to you. I always love getting together, doing shows with you. And you're totally right. We were talking before the show about all of our other teams. You're a Colts fan. I'm a Niners fan. I'm a Braves fan. They didn't make it. The Suns are falling apart. Literally, Reggie, all my hopes are on Greg Gard. He's like,
that's scary.
He's like the only thing I can pin any sports hopes on right now. So yeah, I hope it works out. On Wisconsin, as always, a bunch of great guests coming up this week. I think we got Osen coming up. I think we got Brian Smith coming up, which is going to be a really interesting conversation about Xavier Lucas. He's obviously has a different perspective there. And I think there's somebody else coming up. I can't even remember, but great content coming up as always. Go follow Rajiv over at Rajiv Badgers and Bucket Report on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.